In this short video, we're going to talk about economic systems. Now, economic systems are ways of allocating scarce resources. They're ways in which we use the resources of the country to produce the items that we want. Now, there are essentially three ways of doing this, and we'll see these as we go through these notes. But it's possible to conceive of other methods of organizing production, but we'll just deal with the three main ones in this class. So an economic system is a way in which society sets about allocating its resources and deciding what it wants to produce. And all countries have to do this. Even the very rich countries have to do it. Rich countries still have scarce resources, and they must decide should they have more military expenditure and perhaps less schools, or more schools and less hospitals, or more roads and hospitals and less schools and less military, or what combination must they come down with? And this is really a function of the political system. Politicians should obey the voters. The politicians are put there to make decisions on behalf of the electorate, on behalf of the people who elected them. And they should pick up on what the people want. Do the people want more hospitals and more schools, or more roads, or more military expenditure? What is it that people want? So an economic system ideally should reflect the views of the people. Different countries have different methods of tackling the economic problem, this allocation problem, how to allocate the scarce resources. And different countries approach it differently. And as I said, we can conceive of essentially three main types of economic system. And we'll start with the capitalist system. This is a market or capitalist, where a market or capitalist economy is where resources are allocated by prices without government intervention. It's just left to the market. A pure capitalist economy is one where resources are allocated through the market mechanism, through the forces of supply and demand. So customers want more of a particular product. They try to buy it. There's a shortage. There's a queue, there's a signal to the producer, more is required. But also, the price will rise. People will compete amongst themselves for the product, the price will be bid up. And that's also a signal to the producer to produce more. And also, a higher price means more resources can be dedicated to the production of that product. Because now companies have more revenues, so they're able to buy more raw materials, employ more people, scale up production. And this all happens automatically. In a capitalist economy, no government is required. Resources are simply allocated through the market mechanism, through the forces of supply and demand. It's difficult to find examples of pure capitalist economies because we're talking here in the extreme, but you could think of places like America and Hong Kong. These are fairly, Hong Kong's a fairly recent example to the list in a sense because it was unknown when it was developing back in the 1930s and 40s and 50s and 60s and so on. It was a relatively unknown place. Now we know it is a very capitalistic society. But we can conceive of other areas as well that may be more interested in using a minimal government. So the capitalist society is one where the government plays a very minor role. And it's interesting to debate what should the role of government be. Some would say it's just national security, just protecting the country. Others would say it should be involved to stop abuses and stop abuses of the market, for example, stop monopolies developing and that sort of thing. So, very limited role for the government. Capitalist economy is one where the market mechanism applies. So an increase in price of one good encourages producers to switch resources into the production of that commodity. Consumers decide the type and quantity of the good to be bought, and a decrease in the price of one good encourages consumers to switch to buying that commodity. So the capitalist system really sees the market mechanism as dominant. We as consumers, we switch our preferences according to prices, according to tastes and so on, and these are manifest in the market. And the market signals the producers to produce more or to produce less. Of course, people on high incomes are able to buy more goods and services than the less well off. So there may be issues of equality and inequality and unfairness in the system. And again, back to the role of the government. Perhaps that's the role of the government, to correct the market system when it gets too far out of balance. Maybe there should be some intervention by the government just to regulate it, just to make sure that it doesn't go too far to any extreme. But that's all debatable. Many people would say the capitalist system should be left to its own devices, left to allocate the resources. It's the most efficient way of doing it. Out of self-interest, people will produce goods, sell the goods because they want to make a profit. We buy them because we want the goods, we like the goods. So it's in our interest. And there's no force involved anywhere. So it really goes back to a very famous Scottish writer called Adam Smith, who in 1776 wrote quite a famous book called An Inquiry into the Cause and Effects of the Wealth of Nations, which is known as The Wealth of Nations. And in there he's suggested that the capitalist system is a bit like an invisible hand. It allocates resources. And it does it out of self-interest. There's no planning. There's no conscious effort on the part of government or a committee to allocate resources or to make resources available. It happens through the market system. The second type we can look at are what's known as command economies. These are really economies where there's a mistrust of the market. There's a mistrust of capitalists. And it really hinges around political ideas like communism and extreme socialism and ideas like this, which suggest that the capitalist system can lead to bad outcomes. It can lead to the destruction of the environment or a misallocation of resources. The wrong items are produced, perhaps only favouring the rich, whereas poor people can't afford them, and so on. So there are people who are opposed to the capitalist system, and these are the ones who are diametrically opposed. These are completely the opposite of the capitalists. In a command planned or socialist economy, the government owns most of the resources and decides the types and quantities of a good to be made. Excuse me. So in a command economy, the government owns the means of production. The government own the factories, they own all the resources of the country, and the government are meant to produce goods and services that the people want. Now you can see there are issues with this one as well. The same as with capitalism, there are problems here. For example, who determines what the people want? How does the government know what the people wants? How does the government know the variety of goods and services that the people want? So choice may be restricted in this type of economy. People may not get the products that they want because they're not made available. Perhaps only limited amounts are made available, limited choice I should say, is made available so as to conserve energy and conserve resources. And maybe in a world where we are facing shortages, global shortages, maybe there's a case to be made in favour of this. But the choices that are available to the consumer makes this not a very attractive model. So, for example, we saw the Berlin Wall falling because the people in East Germany wanted more resources. They wanted more economic freedom. They wanted more choice. Well, we also saw the Soviet Union break up, and many countries who were under the control of the Soviet system become independent and become very capitalistic. So the practice of command economies it suggests that they are not popular. North Korea at the moment is an example of a command economy. Whether it continues as a command economy or not, it's debatable. But at the moment, the government in North Korea controls all of the resources, and the people receive what the government says they can receive. The government sets output targets for each district and factory and allocates the resources necessary. Essentially, that's the way it works. The government tell the companies what to produce, or tell the producer what to produce. The factories and companies as we would know them don't exist. They all belong to the government. So the government tells them what to produce. The incomes are often more evenly spread out than in other types of economy. So the chances are you don't have very rich people and very poor people. People more or less get the same. So people say it's very fair in that sense. If it is so fair, it's very difficult to account for what happened with the breakup of the Soviet Union and the emergence of so many countries who were under the control of this type of thinking. Why did they want to change it if it is very fair? So there are all sorts of issues we need to consider in this situation. It's a really big topic and it's very complicated. The last type of economy we want to look at is known as a mixed economy. In the mixed economy, privately owned firms generate produce, generally produce goods, I should say, while the government organises the manufacture of essential goods and services such as education and health service. So it's a mix. It's private and public. So the private sector produce goods that consumers want, and the government takes control of what it sees as essential items like education, healthcare, defence, many parts of life that the government deems to be essential, it controls. So mixed economies are a mixture of command and capitalist. The two are sitting side by side. The United Kingdom is an example of a mixed economy. In the UK, there is a big private sector producing goods and services that consumers want, and people work for those. And it also produces healthcare, education, and so on through the government channel. So the government supplies education for children going to school and helps out with colleges and so on. And the private sector produces food and clothing and all the consumer items that we want. So it's a mix of the two. It's a mixed economy. So those are the three main types of economic system. The capitalist system, the command economy, and the mixed economy. And of the three, it seems to be the case that the mixed economy is the most popular. This is the one that seems to apply in many countries. That's all we're going to deal with in this very short session, so we're going to leave it at that and say thank you for watching.